Uh-oh. In broadcast? Not yet. All right. Hey, good evening, everybody. It is Wednesday. What do you call it? Hump day, right? So let me share this screen. So this is Lillie Hendy with AgentPrep to do review to help you pass your exams. So what you see on the screen right now is one of the sources that we use for studying. It's like the best one that I have experienced, that I have found. It's old, and you know what? Sometimes old material is the best material. So the Texas Real Estate Sales Exam book, 4th edition, and this is by Learning Express. It's from 2006, but it is an excellent source. The other source that we'll use tonight is this one here, Texas Real Estate License Exam Prep. And this one is 3rd edition by Performance Programs Company, and those 4 authors, and it says all in one. So this class is for you to help you pass your exams. Your national exam, anyone throughout the United States, okay, can watch the national portion of it, and which will cover, glossary, will cover national questions next after the glossary, and then we go into state questions. So let me also get set up on Facebook so that I can see the screen and anyone who ends up joining live. Oh, darn it. Oh, I did post it. Let me also get set up. Oh, darn it. Oh, crap. Okay. So those of you on your phone, typically I do it large enough so that you can be able to see it on your phone, because nowadays, a lot of work is done on our phones. Even though the computer, right, is the easiest way to access everything. So I'll just wait a little bit to get some more students to show up. Okay, quiet day today. Very interesting. Okay, so as I mentioned, the book that we're starting out with for glossary is the Texas Real Estate Sales Exam, created in 2006. I love this book because it has a little bit of about what the Texas Sales Exam is, a test preparation. It has 4 exams, 1, 2, 3, and 4, a little refresher course, math review, and lots of glossary. These exams are 110 pages. 110 questions, 80 national and 30 state, even though you have 125 questions now, 85 national and 40 state. Okay, we will get going and start with our vocabulary, which I had it prepared. It's right of egress. Okay, at any time, you can make comments. Let me know if you have any questions. And when we get to the question portion of it, I'll ask you to type the question number and the letter answer. Okay, right of egress, the right to enter or leave designated premises. So you're entering a home or you're exiting a home through windows, through doors. So that's an egress and ingress. You're also going in and out of a piece of property, a piece of land, a residence. So that is egress and ingress, a right to enter or leave. So egress, enter, and ingress, leave. Right of first refusal, the right of a person to have the first opportunity to purchase property before it is offered to anyone else. So once we have properties listed and the seller accepts an offer, however, that buyer may have to sell their property before they can purchase. Yes. So that buyer will have the first right of refusal. When a second offer comes in, the first buyer will be given the opportunity to perform within 48 or 72 hours. If they cannot perform on their offer because their home hasn't been sold, then they lose their position and the second contract goes into first position. And so that is the right of first refusal. If you have a home that you want to sell and you told a neighbor or somebody else, if for some reason I were to sell it, you're going to have the first opportunity to make me an offer before I offer it to anyone else or before I even list the property with a realtor. So that is first right of refusal. Right of redemption, the statutory right to reclaim ownership of property after a foreclosure. So if you had a property that you owned and you were defaulted on payments, then of course the deed of trust, the trustee will start the process to foreclose on you. Should the property be foreclosed, you will be given an opportunity to redeem that property, the statutory rights to reclaim ownership. And that happens more on tax foreclosures. So a lot of investors like to buy properties for the taxes that were not paid by an owner. That owner can lose the whole property, even if it's worth hundreds of thousands or million. They'll lose it for the property taxes that are owed. They are given 2 years of redemption, and they're able to claim their property back by paying the investor, the person that bought it, 25% interest on the money owed for the first year, or 50% interest on the total balance owed to the investor for the second year. So 25% on the first year is the interest rate that has to be paid on any balance that the investor purchased the property at the court steps, and 50% on the second year. Okay, right of survivorship. So right of survivorship surfaces on 2 types of property ownership. There's 4 different types of property ownership. The 2 that have right of survivorship are joint tenancy and tenants by the entirety. So in joint tenancy, it has to meet 4 conditions. T-tip, they bought it at the same time, took title in the same way, either through a deed conveyance or gift, however it was taken over. have the same equal interest, and have total possession. All has to happen at the same time, same day, same title company. And if one of those partners were to decease, then the other partners have equal, the other partners get the percentage of the, I'm sorry. So let's say you have 4 partners. Each of you owns 25%. One of those partners passes away. That 25% of the one partner that passed away is divided into 3 parts with the other 3 owners. So that is right of survivorship. One dies, it goes to the other partners. And so that's what it means. Survivors acquire the interest of the deceased joint tenant. The other one that has right of survivorship is tenants by the entirety, which is in other states. In Texas, it's called community property. That one does not have rights of survivorship. So joint tenancy by the entirety, that means husband and wife for a couple. And if one of the spouses dies, their 50% automatically goes to the other person. Hello, let's see, SV, who's here? Oh, for some reason, I can't see it on, I can't see it on my Facebook, the comments. That's weird. So who is SV? Hello, SV. You're very welcome. See, SV says hi, except I'm not sure what who totally is SV. On, let's see, on Facebook, I may be able to see your full name, but right now on here, comments, I can't see it. Okay, so thank you for joining us. All right, the riparian rights. Riparian rights are the rights of a landowner whose property is adjacent to a flowing waterway. So riparian rights, think river, a flowing body of water, okay? It's flowing, a creek, a river, and it's adjacent to the property that you might own. And so you have rights to use sometimes that water. If it's from a river, if it's from a creek, you may be given water rights in order to use some of that. But it is riparian rights is along a river, okay? The littoral rights, Littorral, that is for a standing body of water, like a lake or an ocean. So riparian, river, flowing waterway, such as a river, to access and use water. Littoral, which we covered a long time ago, is for land adjacent to a lake or an ocean or a pond. Okay, we'll start with the S's. Okay, safety clause. So a safety clause in a contract is a provision that provides a time period following expiration of a listing agreement during which the agent will be compensated if there is a transaction which a buyer who was initially introduced to the property by the agent. So in this case, we usually put 30, 60, or 90 days. That if the listing is terminated, okay, or even expired, and a buyer that was shown that property during the listing time, and a list of those buyers were given to the seller, then if the seller sells that property to one of those buyers, okay, that viewed the property during the listing, the broker and realtor are due the commission. So that's a safety clause within the listing agreement, and also through a buyer representation agreement. The sale lease back, a transaction where the owner sells improved property. So, you know, look at the word sale, lease back. So somebody sells it and leases it back. So the owner sells improved property and as part of the sales transaction, signs a long-term lease to remain in possession of its premises, thus becoming a tenant of the new owner. So this can happen in commercial properties. So if you're in a commercial property and you decide that you want to liquidate your investment in order to have the cash, and it'll be much easier just to lease the commercial rental area in a strip mall, in a large mall, or anywhere, then you're going to sell it with the agreement to the new owner that you will automatically lease it back. Okay? So this is more typical on investment properties. Sometimes it's done on residential, but there's a limitation with residential, no more than 90 days. And so that is so that the new owner can end up moving into the property. Unless that owner decides they're going to make it a rental property, then they can continue leasing it to the prior owner of the property, who was the seller. So sale and then lease it back. Okay? Sales contract, a contract between a buyer and a seller outlining the terms of the sale. Okay, so with Texas Real Estate Commission, okay, we have our contract. This is the information of buyers, information of IAB as broker services. So this is the 1 to 4 family residential contract. So this is an agreement between a buyer and a seller. So the buyer's realtor will write this contract up by filling up the blanks that you see on there. We don't change any of the text. Why? We are not attorneys, right? We are not lawyers. All we do is talk to the buyer and ask him the question. So here goes the name of the seller and the buyer. And we get the seller's name from the county appraisal district listing where they pay the taxes. Just in case the realtor doesn't have the right name or all the parties to the property within the listing. Then you start at the legal description. Here is taken from the county appraisal district. It has to be exact. That's how the property is identified. And so then we continue to ask the buyer questions to complete any of the blanks. Third-party financing addendum, a loan assumption, or seller financing if there's going to be a loan. If it's cash, you just fill out A and then you bring it down to C. So all these questions have to be asked to the buyer because we don't make a decision on any of these questions. We only complete the contract. Okay? So where was it? So that is an agreement between the buyer and the seller with all the terms of the sale. And so that is something that you really want to review because that takes place a lot in the state exam. So if you're from a different state here, you're not from Texas, then you review your particular state exam. And those will be free online with the particular state association of realtors. Ours is Texas Association of Realtors, so we can look it up on there. And this one is, like 10 pages. And we got to complete it all. And at the end, okay, let me go to the end. And we discuss all this with the buyer, but we don't have to read everything. And we have to complete the seller and the buyer's information so that the title company knows where to send notices that have to be delivered by the title company, emails, phone numbers, addresses. Some realtors don't like to put that because some buyers and some sellers will call the other party directly, and that's a no-no. And then if there's any addendums that are part of the contract, then we check them here and we include them with the contract. These are addendums. They're added to the contract between the buyer and the seller. And then this is the execution date after everybody has signed. The realtor completes that. And then there's the broker information page. So the listing agent and the buyer agent with their brokers, you complete all that information. So that is the contract between them. If there's a loan involved, and this is when the title company receipts it, okay, they They stamp on here when they receive the earnest money and the option fee, and they keep that in their trust account. So the date exactly and by whom it was receipted. And that we have to deliver to our compliance department with whatever broker we're with. So that's the agreement between buyer and seller. Sales contract. Okay, that's what we were just doing. A salesperson. So in order to do a sales contract, we want to have a salesperson, right? That's assigned by the broker, one for the listing and one for the buyer. Even though they say they're assigned by the broker, the realtor is the one that actually obtains, okay, procures the buyer or procures the seller, unless it's referred by the brokerage or some other realtor. But it's all, we are all associates of the brokerage, the broker, okay? All right, we're going to end there since this is an hour class. We do 20 minutes of vocabulary, then 20 minutes, 19 to 20 minutes of questions for national. So the next thing that we're going to do now is national. And bear with me because I've got a broken right hand. And so I have to write notes with my left hand in order to know where I start next time, next Wednesday. So we're actually on lesson 46. And we will start with what salvage value. I'll tell you what, it's different writing with the other hand, but you know, we become I'm becoming ambidextrous and write a lot bigger. And that's on page 178. All right. So now we're going to go into national questions. The national questions, we're going to do it on the other book. And when you start, I'd like you to participate, okay, with all these questions. So the second book that we use is this one, Texas Real Estate License Exam. This was published in 2020. So it's a newer book than the other one. And so let's go. And I like it because, again, it has national law review. So the overview and instructions, all the different sections that you studied in your books, okay, are summarized in here for you to review. It also has math cramp cards, Texas law and regulations. Of course, this is for Texas, licensing regulations. And then it has the national practice exam that applies to anybody, any state, any of 50 states. Then it's got text. So it's got 10 tests, okay, for the national. And then for the state, it has like 7 tests. And then it has a full-blown Texas license examination and the answer key. So the answer key, all right, also explains the answers. So let me get to the answer key. See on here, the answers are also explained. You have the number, the letter, and it gives you a description of the answer. Okay. All right. So we're going to start with test number 2, question 51 on page 142. Right, let me close the notebook. Let me enlarge this so that we can see it a little bit larger. Okay, question 251. Hold on. Let me check my other phone setup. All right. National questions. Everybody can participate here. Remember to type in the question number 2.51 and then the answer. Okay, a tenancy at will can usually be terminated how? By A, either party giving proper notice, B, either party without notice, C, a sublease with the lessor's approval, or D, an assignment by the lessor. So how can the tenancy be terminated when it is tenancy at will? I'll give you a chance to participate and write an answer. Hello, let's see. SB, who's here? Oh, sorry. I was refreshing my other screen because I've got multiple screens so that I can see if Facebook is working. In addition to this is being streamed onto my YouTube channel and then to the Facebook page and group AgentPrep. Okay, so go ahead and participate and type your answer either on Facebook, okay, or on YouTube. For some reason, I can't see the answer. That's weird here. Why won't it let me? Okay, so who's going to comment? There we go. Now it's going to start doing it. So if you're on Facebook, go ahead and comment here. Okay. Oh, I didn't type comment very well. Okay, so when you type it on Facebook, it's going to show up on my live stream with StreamYard, and I'll get to show your answer. So this is the time to do it. If for some reason you get it wrong, I'll correct you and I'll explain why. If you get it right, then voila. Okay, the answer here, either part is A, either party giving proper notice, tenancy at will. So 251 is A. Hey, Blanca, how are you doing? Thank you for joining us. All right, so that is 251A. These are national questions. Number 52. Can you all see those large enough? Because sometimes I keep changing the font so that you can see it larger and larger, make it easier if you're seeing it on the phone. Okay, number 52. Under the Uniform Residential Landlord and Tenant Act, URLTA is an acronym that you could find as, if a lease does not state a clear expiration date, the lease is regarded as what? Because the lease has to have 2 or 3 things that are critical to any lease, especially when it's in writing, because a lease less than a year does not have to be in writing, but anything a year or later does have to be in writing. So under the Uniform Residential Landlord and Tenant Act, if a lease does not state a clear expiration date, the lease is regarded as what? A, invalid. B, a tenancy from period to period. C, a tenancy at will. Or D, a tenancy for years. So let's say you go stay at a hotel. You're a tenant and you're there from what? From day to day, right? What would that be considered? Okay, right. Type your answers down. I give you a little bit of time so that you can answer before I post the correct answer. So there are at least 2 of you on here. Go ahead. I invite you to participate. Okay, I've got some shy folks today. All right, the answer here is 252B. What was the example? Oh, the example that I gave is that if you're staying at a hotel from day to day, what is that considered? It's a tenancy. Or if you're in an apartment from day to day, I mean, from month to month, so that's considered what? Period to period, month to month, day to day. When it doesn't have a clear expiration date, then it's considered period to period. So whatever is agreed upon by the lessee and the lessor. So the ULTA or the URTA, the Uniform Residential Landlord and Tenant Act, sets standards for improving oral, vague, or unbalanced lease agreements. In the case of an unclear lease expiration date, the lease is generally deemed to be a periodic tenancy, day to day, month to month. So it's period to period. Oh, I forgot to let you all know that for me to see, you can grant, for me to see your name on StreamYard and let's see here, because like, for example, this is Blanca Garza. However, she hasn't given, because I hadn't instructed you all, hadn't granted Facebook permission to have StreamYard post on Facebook your name. Then it shows it as a Facebook user instead of I've given StreamYard Facebook permission. So you can go to this link here, StreamYard.com, Facebook, and give Facebook permission. So I just put it on the comments on Facebook. Okay, so you'll see a screen like that. Let StreamYard see your Facebook Live comments. Facebook has to have permission to post your name in other social media other than Facebook. And right now I am streaming this through StreamYard. Therefore, we have to give them permission. When you do that, you'll get to see either like here, Lillie Hendy Dominguez, or you'll get to see AgentPrep. Okay. All right. Number 253. The Uniform Residential Landlord and Tenant Act generally does not apply to whom? To a hotel. So I gave you an example of a hotel, okay, just so that you could understand. When you go to a hotel, you're usually there day to day or week to week. However, with a tenant, at hotels, we're not necessarily tenants, even though some hotels do have long-term rentals. Okay. I had a brother stay at a hotel where they rent an apartment or a room for months. So it usually, Uniform Residential Landlord and Tenant Act generally does not apply to A, hotel, B, a single family residence, C, a unit in an apartment building that has fewer than 10 units, or D, a duplex in which one owner or the owner occupies one of the units. So whenever you're renting, so that residential landlord and tenant, right? Because you're talking about tenancy. There's going to be a lease agreement, either verbal or in writing if it's a year or longer. So which one would generally not apply? No one's taking a risk. A, Blanca. Hey, you got it. You accepted. You gave Facebook permission. That's awesome. So Blanca says A, and that is correct. Okay. The answer is 253A. So on the next question, Blanca, I ask you to please type the question number and then the answer so that we know which question you're referring to. Thank you for that. That's great. And it doesn't mean that it totally doesn't apply. It just says generally does not apply. Okay. So we have to select the best answer. Everything else would be considered having a lease, a family residence, a unit in an apartment complex, or in a duplex. Okay. All right. Number 254. Okay. Let me see if I can get it all on one, the cold question on one screen. All right. I'll have to, let's see here, enlarge the text. Let's see if this will work. Oh man, that's too much. Darn it, it may not work. Yes, it did. Okay, question 254. In executing a condominium lease, this is a condo lease, condominium lease, a tenant has acquired what? A temporary transfer of legal title. B, a limited freehold interest in the airspace of her unit. C, his or her unit. C, a temporary possessory interest. Or D, a title conveyance in exchange for rent. So when you lease a condominium, like you lease an apartment or you lease a house, a tenant has acquired what? A temporary transfer of legal title? A limited freehold interest in the airspace of the unit. So airspace is anything above, right? C, a temporary possessory interest. So they possess the unit for a temporary time. Or D, a title conveyance, which means there's a name change. It's being transferred in exchange for rent. So some of these questions may not be exactly to the material that you learn. They're asking questions to get you to think, because we're supposed to learn the material, not necessarily memorize. So what would you answer? 254A? I'm sorry, 254, not A, but 254. Anyone? No? Okay, 254, going once, going twice, gone. The answer is 254C. Oh, Blanca, you did it at the same time as I did. Okay, a temporary possessory interest, right? They possess that condominium. They have a possessory interest. They don't own it. There was no title transfer, no legal name transfer, no conveyance. It is only temporary possession of the property. Once the lease expires, it reverts back to the owner or to a remainder person. So very good, Blanca. So the answer is 254C. I have to keep track of time so that we can move on to, gosh, it's already 6:41. All right, number 255, and then we're going to go into state questions. So let me change the font again so I can get it all on one page. See if that worked. Yes, okay, 255. When a tenant acquires a leasehold, they have a hold on a lease estate through a lease, What does the property owner acquire? A freehold estate for years. B, a reduced leasehold estate. C, a defeasible estate. Or D, a leased fee estate. So the tenant acquires a leasehold estate. They have an interest in that estate under a lease. What does the property owner acquire? So in that time frame, what do they have? What do they get? They, meaning what does the owner get? So Blanca says D. And yes, that is correct. So it is a leased fee estate, right? The tenant goes into a lease in exchange for a fee to the owner. So the owner acquires a fee, okay, for that lease. So 255D, very good, Blanca. Okay, so that was the last question for national. Okay, so we'll start with, yeah, I'm gonna have to practice writing much quicker. I've been practice voicing, right? But I can't convert voice to text on paper. Oh my gosh, this is 256 on page. Dang it. Okay, that's on page 143. All right, and the answers are on page 248. Okay, so let's go into, so we're done with this source, okay? And so the source that we just used, let me bookmark that for next week. So in case you wanted to buy this book, okay, this is the one that I'm using, and it also has national, state, and some vocabulary. The other book is free on our Facebook group. Well, shoot, where did it go? Come on. Why isn't it showing up for me? Oh, that's weird. There we go. Okay, so we're back to this book, Texas Real Estate Sales Exam. And this is from 2006, but it's still an excellent, I can't say it enough, book for studying for your exams. There are a few state questions that are outdated. For example, one of them is, this book says you have 6 months to take the exams, however, now you have 12 months to take the exams. Okay, so we're going into national questions now. All right. So just want to show everybody. So we're getting into national questions. I'm sorry. Oh, man. We're going into state questions. Sorry, let me edit that. It's a little cumbersome for me right now that I'm only using one hand. So it's state questions that we're going into, not national questions. Well, did it correct it? It's funny, it corrected it on Facebook, but it's not showing up. Okay, state questions. Once it transfers it. So I'm trying to show on the recording what we're going to be starting. All right. So let's go to state questions. And we're starting with question 101. I'm going to have to minimize this a little bit so we can see the whole question. There we go. Okay, question 101. It says, salesperson A obtains a listing for a property in Sunset Terrace. In the listing, permission is given to the broker to function as an intermediary and to make appointments of associates to communicate with each party. So salesperson B is working with a buyer who wants representation, but does not want to sign a buyer representation agreement. So salesperson B prepares an offer. Remember, they didn't sign a buyer's representation agreement. So that doesn't make them a client. So salesperson B prepares an offer for the listing obtained by salesperson A, and both parties are given written notice that salesperson A is communicating with the seller and salesperson B is communicating with the buyer. Which of the following best describes what is taking place? A, this is properly done intermediary transaction. B, this is an illegal act under the provisions of the Texas Real Estate License Act, which is TRELA. C, each of the parties has his or her own agent. Or D, the broker is functioning as a properly appointed intermediary. So remember, the buyer agent is dealing with a buyer that won't sign a buyer representation agreement. So there's no agreement between the buyer and the broker. So they're considered what? A customer, right? They're a customer, not a client. So what would be the correct answer? Is this properly done intermediary? Is this an illegal act? Or each party has his own agent? Or the broker is functioning as a properly appointed intermediary? Okay, so Blanca says A, this is properly done intermediary. That is not correct. The only way that there's an intermediary, Blanca, is when both of the realtors representing a client are under the same broker. So salesperson A would have to have been, and salesperson B would have to be with the Sunset Terrace or with the same broker, okay? And they are not with the same broker. It says, in the listing, permission is given to the broker to function as an intermediary and to make appointments of associates to communicate with each party. However, salesperson B is working with a buyer who wants representation but doesn't want to sign, but does not want to sign a buyer representation agreement. So if the broker has both realtors in the same office and they're going to be an intermediary, a realtor cannot represent a client without signing a buyer's representation agreement. So they become a buyer. They become a customer. So you cannot have an intermediary situation, okay, when the buyer does not sign an agreement. So what does it make it? The answer here, what is this? Question 101, right? So the answer here is B. This is an illegal act under the provisions of the Texas Real Estate License Act, because it says that the listing does give the broker permission to act as an intermediary and appoint one realtor to represent the seller, salesperson A, and then with salesperson B communicating with the buyer. But buyer doesn't want to sign anything, so they are not being represented. So it is illegal, B. So according to the answer, it says the Texas Real Estate License Act, TRELA, Section 1101.559 Texas Occupations Code requires written permission from each of the parties in order for the broker to function as an intermediary. Since the buyer did not sign a buyer's rep agreement, which would specify that a broker can act as intermediary, then that broker does not have permission to function as an intermediary. They don't have it in writing. They have it verbally. The buyer is saying, hey, I want you to represent me, but I'm not going to sign anything except for the contract, right? Well, we need a buyer's rep agreement. But the contract to the buyer and the seller cannot say that they select intermediary because the buyer is not represented. So that is an illegal act. What happens here is that the buyer agent becomes a sub-agent to the listing agent or the listing broker. So they legally represent the seller, okay, as a sub-agent. We don't do that at EXP. We have to have a buyer's representation agreement in that case. Otherwise, it's one realtor and we get both sides of the transaction, okay? So we would, let's say we're the ones that are representing the seller and we're also writing the offer for the buyer, then we are representing the seller 100%. We will get both sides of the transaction commission and the buyer is representing themselves, or we offer to the buyer to have their own agent appointed or to have an agent appointed to them, or they can go to another brokerage and select their own realtor. Okay. Again, that would not be intermediary unless the second realtor is with the same broker. Then it would be intermediary. Did I make that confusing? All right. So the answer here is B. It is illegal to have intermediary when both are not represented. Okay, so that was 101. Okay, point B. Do you understand, Blanca? You mentioned A. This is properly done. So it is not properly done, okay? And why? Buyer did not sign a buyer's rep agreement. That is why. Okay, number 102. Which of the following, I'm going to increase it, is not listed as included in the property to be conveyed in paragraph 2 of the Texas Real Estate Commission Form 1-4 residential contract? So which of the following is not listed as included in paragraph 2? So what is paragraph 2? Although this is an old document, paragraph 2 may have changed, but let's go to the new contract. I'm trying to get there, okay? All right, so paragraph 2 demonstrates or describes what is included and not: improvements, the land, accessories, exclusions, and reservations. Okay, so right here are improvements that are included, and it itemizes them all, and accessories that are included. And if the seller wants to exclude something, then it would have to be written on here on the contract. Let's go back to the question. So which of the following is not listed as included in paragraph 2? So you would have to go and review it in detail. And this is on the resale 1 to 4, because there are for new construction and for condominiums. A, window air conditioning units. B, a freestanding stove or range. C, a self-contained spa with cover and heater. Or D, gas-fueled fireplace, logs, and fireplace screen. We can go back to the contract. So let's say window air conditioning unit, freestanding stove, spa with cover and heater, and gas-fueled logs. Which one is not included? So here are improvements. Okay, so let's see here. You have, okay, so it doesn't show it on there. On accessories, it's funny, my phone is responding. There are, let's see, artificial fire logs. There's swimming pool equipment and maintenance, entry gates, garage doors, other improvements and accessories, security systems that are not fixtures and controls, hardware, software and applications used, and fireplace screens, window air conditioning, stove. Okay, so which one is not shown? So let's see, wall-to-wall carpeting. So these are things that are attached to the house, permanently installed and built in. So you would have to go quickly and read through all, not quickly, but go and read through all those. So I'm going to tell you the answer because I didn't read every single thing, okay? But you could take a guess. So it did not mention a self-contained spa with cover and heater. Do no intermediary when no representation. That's right, Blanca. There is no intermediary when one party is not represented. Both parties would have to be represented within the same brokerage. If both parties are represented and they're from different brokerages, then it is not an intermediary. Although the contract can specify that they have permission to have intermediary in the listing agreement, and the contract can also specify that the buyer agrees in writing that the broker could be an intermediary. However, when you have two separate brokerages with realtors assigned to them, there is no intermediary. To have intermediary, you have to have both realtors under the same brokerage representing a different client. Okay, so number 102 was C. Gosh, let me read you the full answer. It said, while some may argue that a self-contained spa is an above-ground pool, it is not listed as an accessory. So if we go to the contract, under accessories, there is no spa. Okay, there's a swimming pool and maintenance equipment. And, you know, a jacuzzi would be above ground, okay, but it is not listed it on here. The cover and the heater are absolutely not listed. Now, if we know that there is a jacuzzi and it's being left behind, or a hot tub, and it has a cover, that cover is part and was designed for that above ground pool or jacuzzi, then it would go with it. But it's not listed under accessories, okay? So the answer is C. It did mention window air conditioning units, a freestanding stove, even though it didn't call it a freestanding stove, it said a stove, and it also mentioned fireplace logs. So all those three were included. The contained spa with cover and heater were not included. That could change in the future, okay? As contracts can change on a yearly basis, they don't always necessarily do. But when they do change, we are notified. Our contract changed when effect April 1st of 2021. Okay, so that was question, what, 102? Gosh, my screen is not cooperating today. It's not fun being with one hand here. 102, number C. Hi, Sandy. Thank you for joining us. So Sandy and Kevin. So the answer for 102 Texas state questions is C. A self-contained spa and cover and heater is not included in the accessories on Section 2 of the contract. Okay, although it's after 7, I'm going to do a couple more questions, okay? So again, these are state questions for those of you that maybe came in a little bit later, and these are for Texas. So if you are not from Texas, these do not pertain to you, although some of them may be similar. So under the Texas Real Estate License Act, TRELA, all of the following actions are caused to suspend or revoke a license held by a broker or salesperson. So all of them are true except for one. A, revealing to an owner an offer that is well below fair market value. B, acting in dual capacity of broker and undisclosed principal in any transaction. C, failing to specify in a listing contract a definite termination date that is not subject to prior notice. Or D, placing a sign on real property offering it for sale, lease, or rent without the written consent of the owner or his or her authorized agent. So under TRELA, Texas Real Estate Commission, let me remove that so you can see everything. So under TRELA, all of the following actions are caused to suspend or revoke a license held by a broker or salesperson, except which one? So you can be suspended for all of them except one. So 103. So can you be suspended for revealing to an owner an offer that is well below fair market value? Can you be suspended for acting in dual capacity of broker? Because, you know, we're not a dual state in Texas. We can only represent one. C, failing to specify in a listing contract a definite termination date. So every listing agreement or every contract or lease has to have what? A start and ending date. And D, placing a sign on a property without the written permission. So which one is not a violation that'll cause you to be suspended? Why isn't this working? Usually I can. So anybody taking the risk? No? Okay, so the answer here is A. Revealing to an owner an offer that is well below fair market value, that is acceptable. You will not get suspended for that. Okay, because that's actually one of our duties, to present all offers, whether they're above or below fair market value. Okay, number 104. Boy, these are long questions. Okay, number 104. The buyers want to offer $275,000 for a resale. Oh, hold on. Let me clear this. There, so you can see the whole screen. So the buyers want to offer $275,000 for a resale house. So you say the word resale, keyword, house, by paying $150,000 in cash as closing and pay the seller monthly interest payments of $625 for 2 years. So monthly payment, interest payments, okay, $625. So that's important. Monthly interest payments of $625 for 2 years. At the end of the 2 years, the buyers will pay the final $625 interest payment and the outstanding principal amount of $125,000. In preparing the offer to purchase using Texas Real Estate Commission TREC promulgated contract forms, the buyer's agent will do what? A, write the details of the 2-year interest loan payment in special provisions, paragraph 11, since it deals with the business details of the transaction. B, use the 1 to 4 family contract, paragraph 4, and selling financing addendum to define the proposed financing arrangement. C, call the listing agent for instructions on how the seller wants to set up the business details of the transaction. Or D, write it as a cash offer with details of the seller carryback defined in a separate agreement that will be drawn by the seller's attorney at closing. So remember, they're in the contract. In section 3, the sales portion of it, sales price, you write the amount of cash money going down, and then you can have loan assumption, seller financing addendum, or third-party financing addendum. So this transaction says that they're going to have a large down payment, paying $150,000 in cash, right? So you would write $150,000 in cash on A. Then it says, and pay the seller monthly interest payments. So then this makes it a seller financing addendum that we would be using. And it would specify on the seller financing addendum the terms from the seller, or the terms that the seller and the buyer agree upon. Okay, so the initial down payment is $150. So $150 from $275 leaves a balance of $125. And it says that at the end of the 2 years, the buyer is still going to pay a balance of $125,000. So what does the realtor, the buyer agent, have to do? Write it on special provisions, use the 1 to 4 in the seller financing addendum. C, call the listing agent for instructions. Or D, write it as a cash offer. Anyone, take a risk. Come on, this is where I can help you should you get it incorrect. I can explain it to you, all right, if you were to get it wrong. Okay, there's a Facebook user that says B. That is Coy Coffer. Hey, thank you. I've got a bunch of new people tonight. So welcome to the group. Welcome to the class. And right now we're going over Texas state questions. So that is a very good answer, Coy. The answer is B. So the answer when there was 104B, right? So very good, Coy. All right, one more question and we're going to call it a night. We've gone over so far 15 minutes and I do that sometimes, okay? In fact, the class used to be 2 hours, but I cut it down to an hour because I'm also streaming it to my AgentPrep, YouTube AgentPrep channel. Okay, 105. Jessica owns a rental property that is rented to a tenant and in which her husband has no ownership interest. Okay, so it's independently owned. Jessica wants to sell the property. So Jessica is the owner, right? Who is required by Texas law to sign the listing agreement and the deed? A, Jessica. B, Jessica, her husband, and the tenant. C, Jessica and her husband. D, both Jessica and the tenant. So this is in the state of Texas because we're a community property state. So Jessica owns the rental property that her husband has no ownership interest. So Jessica wants to sell the property. So who is required to sign the listing agreement? Who is on title? Is it Jessica or Jessica and her husband and the tenant? Who is the owner? So what is the answer? Oh, I keep forgetting to take that off. So 105, last question for tonight. Give it a whirl. This is for you to learn. You're not going to get, Coy says A, which is Jessica, who is the owner, right? Anybody else? So Jessica, husband, and tenant. No. Jessica, does a tenant own the property? No. So should the tenant be on a listing agreement where the seller wants to sell? No. Does the husband own the property? No. Jessica bought it before the marriage. Only she owns the property. Now, in the state of Texas, the husband will need to sign at closing because we're a community property state and the title companies are going to need to know that the spouse doesn't have any legal rights and they are releasing it, okay? But legally, the husband does not own it and the tenant, they only have possessory interest on that rental. They only possess it while they're renting for a fee. So the only owner on here that has to sign the listing agreement is A, Jessica, the owner. That's okay, Blanca. This is where we learn. Okay? So Jessica owns a rental property. She is the owner. You're the owner of your house. You own it. So only your name is going to be on the deed and the title. So the title commitment, which they do all the search about the history of a property ownership. So that'll have your name. The deed is signed by the seller and conveyed to a buyer. But the husband here does not own it. Now, any income that they're receiving during their marriage, okay, on that property is considered community property because they're gaining the they're gaining the rental income while they're married. That belongs to both community property in the state of Texas. However, it was purchased prior to marriage, therefore it only belongs to Jessica. Now, if there were, and so she's the only one that signs the listing agreement. However, at the sale, at closing, the husband will have to go in and sign an affidavit, okay, that he doesn't have any ownership. But let's say they invested money into improving the property. Okay, they upgraded it. They put granite, new flooring, a new roof, and that money came from their joint account. It came from both of them. So now the husband does have a percentage owner, and that is on the improvement of it, on the investment that was made while they were married. That belongs to both of them. So it'll be prorated as to what percentage the husband owned based on the investment both of them made after marriage. But the whole property is owned by Jessica. All right. Well, thank you very much for attending the class. Again, this is every week at Wednesday on 6 o'clock, unless I am traveling or I'm at a convention or a conference for eXp Realty. I am with eXp Realty brokerage, and so I am looking, you're very welcome, Coy. I am looking for students that once you pass your exam, I'm looking to have realtors join me at eXp and become my partners, okay? So when you're ready to start interviewing or even before, we can talk about it. I've noticed several students say, Lillie, I didn't know you were, I'm a realtor. So I belong for us with a certain organization, a certain brokerage. So I am looking for partners. So you can select me as your sponsor with my broker, okay? So when you're ready to learn about it, I can share about a brokerage even before you've passed your exam. You want to do some research so that when you pass your exams, you can transfer your license really quick. And make sure all of you take, once you are ready to take your exam, okay, since you're on here attending, that means most of you already registered with your state in order to take your exam. As soon as you get that approval letter, go and get your fingerprints, because if you pass your exams and you don't have your fingerprints yet, now you're going to have to wait to choose a brokerage or to transfer your license because of the fingerprints, okay, the background check. That sometimes takes longer than the results of the exam. The results of the exam are instantaneous when you take the exams. Get your fingerprints as soon as you get that approval letter, or even before you get the approval letter, contact your state real estate commission and ask them where you can get your fingerprints and get those in advance, and they'll be sent to the real estate commission. Okay. Hi, Claire. Nice to see you. Been seeing you a little bit on Facebook. So that was tonight's class for reviewing vocabulary, glossary, keywords, definitions, whatever you want to call them. Very important for helping you pass, especially the national exam. All right. Thanks for attending. This is Lillie Hendy with eXp Realty and AgentPrep. And this is recorded, and now it will be on my YouTube AgentPrep channel, on our Facebook AgentPrep group, and the Facebook page. So until next time, catch you later. Good night.